Netflix uploaded a new documentary called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. In this, a guy by the name of Bob Lazar claims to be a physicist with master's degrees from MIT and Caltech who worked as a scientist for a very secret site called S4 near Area 51. His job, he says, was to reverse engineer alien UFO propulsion technology. He claims that not only are there alien spacecraft there, but that these craft are from the star system Zeta Reticuli and can bend and fold space in order to propel themselves to anywhere in the universe without the need to travel near the speed of light. I just saw this documentary and I thought Mr. Lazar was quite believable. Then I looked more closely at his schematics and explanations. Let's take a look to see if he's orchestrating an elaborate hoax or whether his explanations of the alien technology is scientifically plausible. That's coming up right now. Unless you've been living under a rock for the past 20 years, then you've heard of Area 51 in Nevada. This is a super secret government air base where the Air Force tests some of the most classified aircraft, like the F-117. For a long time, our military did not even confirm its existence, yet everybody could see that it was some kind of air base. So this absurd secrecy of the facility has provided fodder for numerous conspiracy theorists and ufologists. These are people who investigate UFO sightings. But a lot of people don't know that Area 51 was not that well known until Bob Lazar made some bold claims about aliens and alien craft being stored there back 30 years ago in 1989. He gained notoriety worldwide and was partly responsible for making Area 51 a household name today. I don't fancy myself a debunker, so I'm not going to try to debunk Mr. Lazar based on a comprehensive study of everything he's said. In this video, I'm going to look specifically at the science of the spacecraft and the propulsion systems as described by Mr. Lazar and tell you whether this technology is plausible based on proven scientific concepts that we humans know to be true. In the Netflix documentary, Mr. Lazar outlines how the space folding engines on these spacecraft are set up.
Underneath, on the floor below, are the gravity emitters. The center antenna is really an extension of the reactor in the center, and that's a waveguide, which allows the emission of the gravity wave, which forms kind of a heart shape over the whole craft. That's how it creates its distortion. These gravity emitters can be swung all the way up to 180 degrees, and this allows the craft to essentially stand on two of them and hover, while this one swings up and creates a distortion in front of it, allowing the craft to slide forward. So that's how their low power mode, Omicron configuration operate. The Delta configuration uses all three, and unlike science fiction movies where you see flying saucers just flying along like that, they actually fly belly first. The craft flies along, leaves the atmosphere of the planet, it turns its belly to the destination, the three amplifiers focus in on the destination, and that's how it proceeds.
Incredible claims like folding space require incredible evidence. There's no physical evidence to speak of, but there is his eyewitness report. In the documentary, he describes the physical setup of the engines, but what the documentary did not show is his description of how the alien engine works. I found an archived document on the internet that showed his description of the engine that he had on his website in 1996, and a review of it by a particle physicist, Dr. David Morgan. There's a link in the description if you want to see it. Here's how Mr. Lazar described the alien propulsion system. It generates an intense gravitational field, and using that field to distort space-time, bringing the destination to the source, and allowing you to cross many light years of space in little time without traveling in a linear mode near the speed of light. Well, distorting space-time is not a big deal. All matter distorts space-time. That's what gravity is. Your body is distorting space-time right now. What Mr. Lazar, I think, is alluding to is the idea of creating a wormhole in space to go instantly from one location to another. This idea of folding space or creating a wormhole through space instead of traversing through space idea has been talked about for decades in scientific circles. It's been used in movies like Interstellar. It is theoretical and not anything new. The problem is that in order to create a wormhole this size that might allow this kind of travel, you would need one big enough for the spacecraft to go through, and one that would last more than billionths of a second. This, according to everything we know, requires an enormous amount of energy. And I don't mean like the energy of a hydrogen bomb, which converts about 2 pounds of matter into energy. I mean the energy created if the entire mass of the Earth was turned completely into energy using Einstein's equation E equals mc squared, and possibly even more mass than that. But according to Mr. Lazar, the fuel for this spaceship comes from a few hundred pounds of element 115. Now I'll get into the element 115 in a minute, but a few hundred pounds of any matter would not come anywhere close to creating the amount of energy needed for this. The other inconvenience with creating a wormhole is that everything would be sucked into the wormhole, not just the spaceship, but also all the air, the buildings nearby, the trees, the grass, the city, probably half of Nevada. Dr. Morgan says that all of Earth would be sucked into it, but I think the wormhole would likely collapse before that happened. Why would everything be sucked into it? Because if you distort space-time, it creates gravity, and all matter is going to be attracted to this gravity. Gravity does not discriminate between the spaceship and everything else around it. Now, a lot of people give credence to Mr. Lazar because he supposedly talked about element 115 back in 1989, well before it was discovered. Element 115 was actually synthesized by the Russians in 2003 and is now known on the periodic table as moscovium. So proponents say, how could he have known about element 115? Well, here's the thing about heavy elements. In order to predict elements that haven't been discovered yet, all you have to do is look at the periodic table. Naturally occurring elements stop at element 92, uranium. Everything heavier than uranium is synthesized in a lab. So over time, for example, neptunium, plutonium, etc. were synthesized as soon as we had the technology to do it. Currently, elements up to 118 have been synthesized. It doesn't take a genius to predict what elements will be synthesized next. I'll make a prediction for you. An element 120 exists. I'm sure it will be synthesized in the future. So there, I'm a genius. Mr. Lazar claimed that element 115 serves not only as a generator of the gravity A wave, but also as the fuel for the matter-antimatter reactor that powers the rest of the saucer. He says element 115 is bombarded with a proton, which plugs into the nucleus of the 115 atom and becomes 116, which immediately decays and releases a small amount of antimatter. Antimatter and matter collide and annihilate totally, converting to energy. What is antimatter? Antimatter is just like matter, except with the opposite charge. So an antiproton is a proton with a negative charge instead of a positive charge. The problem is, how do you get antimatter like an antiproton? These things are not floating around inside elements like element 115 that can be simply dislodged by hitting them with a proton, as Mr. Lazar seems to be saying. The only way to get antimatter is to convert energy to get a proton-antiproton pair. How much energy would this take? It would take exactly the same amount of energy to create a proton-antiproton pair as the energy you would get out by colliding the proton and antiproton pair together to create energy. This means that the engines on the spacecraft would create no net energy. You can't avoid talking about the credibility of the scientific technology described by Mr. Lazar without talking about his educational background. Famous physicist and ufologist Stanton Friedman looked into Bob Lazar's educational background, and here's what he found. You should know that Mr. Friedman is not a UFO debunker. He has been one of the most ardent supporters of UFO sightings. He has debunked the debunkers. He says, Mr. Lazar was asked to name some of his profs. He said, let's see now, Bill Duxler will remember me from the physics department at Caltech. I located Dr. Duxler. He's a Pierce Junior College physics prof and never taught at Caltech. Lazar was registered in one of his courses at the same time he was supposedly at MIT. In addition, Mr. Friedman says, I checked his high school in New York State. He graduated in August, not with his class. The only science course he took was chemistry. He ranked 261 out of 369, which is in the bottom third. There's no way he would have been admitted to MIT or Caltech. This is not me talking. This is physicist and ufologist Stanton Friedman, who does everything he can to support the idea of UFO sightings. And he is a controversial figure with mainstream scientists. Is Mr. Lazar a fraud? Well, now you could argue that everything I've just said is wrong, and you could be right. It is possible that even though Mr. Lazar got a C averages in high school, MIT and Caltech made an exception for him because of his brilliance, and it's possible that his record was somehow expunged. It's also possible that his brain was manipulated so that he could not recall the names of any of his professors there. It's also possible that Mr. Lazar has discovered a new theory of physics which negates everything we thought we knew about the universe, in which case he's deserving of a Nobel Prize. It is also possible that I'm an alien from Zeta Reticuli sent here to mislead you ignorant humans, to which I say, that may well be true. I've been accused of looking like an alien. Or it could be that Mr. Lazar is a fraud. You decide. Arvinash here. If you like our videos, then consider subscribing and ring the bell so that you can be informed when we upload more fascinating videos. We make 1 to 2 videos a week. We'll see you in the next video.